We ready? Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the meeting to order, and the first order is to announce we had an executive session just prior to this meeting on February 5th at 5:30 to discuss real estate, and the topics were Brincoa and the sewer sale. The next order of business is to approve the minutes of the special meeting of January 15th, 2018.
I move to approve the minutes from January 15th, 2018 as submitted.
I'll second. Any comments from the audience?
Sarah, is this inclusive of all of the roads that you visited? There's a list, it says, including...
You're going to have to use the microphone, Sarah. I apologize, but I just can't.
Oh, John. John, your buddies could tell you what the question was, and they could answer it because they were there.
My ears are getting really, really bad.
Are you ready?
Go ahead.
I'm going to do that for rising. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, John. Are these minutes inclusive of all of the roads that you toured? It names some, it says including, but it doesn't name, like Fellowship, where I pointed out that place where the pavement was degrading, or Horseshoe, where that thing wasn't finished. So you only went to the ones named here?
These were specifically, where we stopped and go.
So it wasn't a comprehensive road tour?
No, it was specific to the road program for this year.
Do you have a comprehensive road tour planned? Or are you just counting on what I tell you that the road's falling apart at the intersection?
I believe we posted the updated version of the road plan that shows what it's completed.
No, we don't have the updated.
Oh, I thought we did.
We're working on it. The updated road program.
So
Right.
was Brian along on it? Brian was along on the tour, so he took notes and he's going to use that to update the road report that Cedarville did last year.
Right, we've been compiling the information when we have the township, all those roads. We're going to update the road program to reflect that. So
Okay.
we're working on that.
And will that be posted on the website?
Yes.
Under roads or something?
Yep.
When do you think you can have that done?
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so if you didn't do Davis Lane, you probably didn't look to see if it was time to put in the guide rail that was suggested when the corner was paved. So we don't know anything about that yet.
There's a lot that still should be done and should be addressed. That's in the road program.
Okay, so if it was already there, you didn't go look at it again. But the new problems like the culvert that wasn't properly edge dressed on Horseshoe Trail, or the degradation of the pavement at Fellowship and Horseshoe, those things you didn't go to because they weren't on last year's report?
Those locations, any other new locations, we're gonna have to look at, but they've not been, those are maintenance items that are not big projects, so they were not part of that tour.
Okay.
Sarah, we have limited funds, and we were looking to bump that up to approximately, correct me if I'm wrong, approximately $1.5 million this year somehow.
Oh, well, I mean, in looking at what we wanted to propose, there's certainly a long list. So we have estimates that probably reach that.
So this was a long advertised road tour, but it really wasn't a road tour, it was a spot tour.
No, roads.
It wasn't, it was not
But
a...
it wasn't comprehensive.
It wasn't
Not every
comprehensive.
road in the township.
Correct.
Okay, are you going to do those ones every 2 years,
No.
3 years, 5
Our
years?
road crew will do that.
So you guys aren't going to do a comprehensive look at the issues
If you're asking
ever
if we
again?
drive every road in the township every year, we do not. Simple as that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mark notifies us of
issues, and then we go out.
So there's no point in notifying you of issues, we should just tell
Erica.
Erica so she tells the road crew.
That is why we have a township manager. She's in charge of the road crew, the police department, zoning and all that.
Okay, and so you're not interested in those issues?
Well, we are,
Thank
but
you.
Erica will bring them to us.
Okay,
And, or you can bring them in public meeting too.
I'm just
There
wondering.
used to be a supervisor in charge of the roads, that's not true,
No. They keep the engineers employed.
I guess.
Any other comments from the audience? Seeing none, call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? No. Next is the approval of minutes of the Board of Supervisors meeting January 16, 2018.
I move to approve the minutes from January 16, 2018, as submitted.
Second?
Any comments from the audience?
No typos that I found.
Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Almost called.
Any nays?
Say, good job.
I'm sorry, Sarah, Next item is the approval of the bills list. Tonight's bills list is, the township bills list is $104,584.88. The reimbursable bills list is $16,969.05. And the subdivision utility plant bills list is $28,979.63. All three total, $150,533.56.
I move that the board approve the bills list dated January 6th, dated February 5th, 2018, in a total amount of $150,533.56.
I'll second that motion.
Any comments from the audience? Art, let's go with you first.
I'll save you the trouble of telling me, John.
What's that?
I'll save you the trouble of telling me.
Okay.
New Holland Auto Care, road truck number 3, replaced the radiator and diesel, induction, and I don't know what it is.
Oh, I see, it was a really long,
Well.
list that it got cut off there. The truck needed a number of things addressed,
then
so
this
yeah, I'm sorry, it got cut off.
Okay, so then this is not just what was...
It's continued,
Okay.
yeah.
And down on Principal Financial, police employees life disability and road employee life and disability. Why is the road crew or the road employees almost double the cost of the police?
That is proportionate to the bill and catching up with the bill. It may look like that for this bills list, but this is just catching up from a previous bill. So we had a credit in one area, and these are the amounts due. And also, for Principal Financial, this takes care of a portion of, definitely the different costs based on the, really the type of individuals you have that you get your assessment. In general, it's, you're looking at, age and different factors, so, yeah. So sometimes it fluctuates, but we're catching up from last month, so that is part of
Because I was
that.
wondering, because police, certainly their liability and life insurance should be a lot more than what the road crew.
Correct, and they actually have, they have another policy that takes care of the Heart and Lung Act and some other things too that are part of their collective bargaining agreement as well. So this just takes care of a portion.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Sarah?
I should just use that chair. This is an easy one, John. It's probably because I have the draft bills list that Brian sent me. It says the sewer is $29,000, and I think you read $28,000.
Right.
So could you just let me know which one's right?
The one that the board has is correct. I noticed there was a duplication on the phone bill, so I removed that.
One of those identical, $399.
You got it.
Okay,
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I'm a little confused. Did we propose the motion incorrectly?
No, it's fine.
No, you're fine.
We caught
Yeah, we
some.
noticed
It's
that.
just your,
duplicates,
just
that's
your
all.
information to the public wasn't from.
Any other questions from the audience? Maria?
wondering if there's a duplication on the bill for movie night. There's one $233 invoice under card services, and then you see the same thing under Swank, which is the movie. So I'm just wondering if maybe it was paid under using a credit card, and then the bill was picked up
Or is
as
that
well.
credit card?
Excuse me?
I'm looking for it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
See what question it is. And it's the same amount?
It's the same amount.
Okay. Yeah, that's,
We're gonna have to get an improvement on our bookkeeper.
Okay, thank you for noting that.
are you gonna make a note of that?
You know what, yeah, so,
Tomorrow, I'll look at it.
sure. It may be taken care of under that card member service.
It is, I mean, it's under
We're
Swank.
gonna have the support.
It's 117, so that's the one I put in.
Okay,
And then when you got the Visa bill, you put it in.
okay.
I think, unless it's two different
We'll
movies.
look at it, okay. I'll pull those checks here.
Any other questions from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? I'm sorry.
Don't you have to amend your motion to adjust for whatever Mike's
We don't know
talking about?
though, we don't know for sure.
So sometimes you approve a bills list.
To look at it
saying
further. Right.
Including whatever the right number is here.
She brings up a good point, Joe.
Yeah.
Do we have to go back and amend that motion?
Why don't you just amend the motion, take one of what you think is the duplicate off the bills list, and if it's wrong, then pass it next one.
Well, unfortunately, we already voted.
Well, accept an amendment to the motion.
It would take off.
Okay, can I have an amended motion, gentlemen?
Well, we don't know we're gonna delete it. It may be legitimate, that's the issue.
You can delete it for tonight, put it on next month's bills list, I think. It appears
You
to
want me
be a
to void-
duplicate, right?
Well, it appears to, but then we're voiding the check, but we can do that. Even if it's right, we'll end up voiding the check.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of work for the bookkeeper.
It is, damn it. Okay, I would like to make a motion to amend the bills list, allowing for the possible voiding Schwank Motion Pictures invoice.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments from the audience? All those in favor?
Aye.
Did that do it, Joe?
That'll do it.
Next is the manager's report. Erica?
All right, thank you. I have a brief report for this month. I just want to go over a few items, lots of plans in the works. The comprehensive plan, as we've been reporting on, is still underway. But the multimodal transportation plan for the Phoenixville region, that's being headed up by the Chester County Planning Commission. And they're working through their draft plan. We are stakeholders as part of that plan. And I am meeting with Chester County to update them on different priority areas in the township. Lowigs Corner and the future town center for the Weatherstone development is certainly one for some multimodal implements, as well as the connection to Brinco Ed and our future park and all the various preserve along St. Matthews. In addition to that, just in general, share the road. With the types of roads we have in the township and the different modes of transportation that we'd like to encourage, just trying to focus on that as part of the plan. So it's been a good dialogue, and there will be a draft plan in April. There'll be a public meeting coming up on February 15th in Phoenixville at the Technical College High School, Pickering campus, from 5 to 8 p.m. It's also the night of our Planning Commission meeting, so hopefully I'll be able to bounce from one to another. So we'll just figure that all out. We are still going through, for the staff here at the township, I'm going through some applications now to fill some staff positions. We are looking at updating our website. We've been trying to make some changes. There's a few functions on the website now that are a bit outdated, so we are looking at different plugins You'll notice on our calendar, it's gonna look a little different, and I'd like some feedback on that. We're trying to make things more user-friendly and bolder on what's important information to try and get out. In addition, just a few things, the Parks and Recreation Commission is not gonna be meeting on February 7th, Wednesday. That meeting has been canceled, and we'll get posting out about that. Definitely we'll meet next month, and I spoke with the chair today of that committee, and I know there's some discussion about Community Day and some things to do to keep programming going in May. The township offices are closed on Monday, February 19th for President's Day, so the next board meeting is going to be Tuesday, February 20th. Just please take note of that. And various departments are busy with a variety of work. We had 14 permit applications processed for building and zoning. Finance Department, our 2017 audit is underway. We started that, kicked that off today. And the road department's been busy with our winter weather events. We've really gotten the use of salt, unfortunately. Just it happens to be the case this year. We are trying to work through our dirt and gravel road program because this is our clearance right now for the bog turtle. No bog turtle issues right now, apparently. So we're trying to work with that on Bartlett Lane and Green Lane. And our solicitor's office is working on, I just touched base with Rob Sevia today, Joe, with regard to obtaining our required agreements for the French Creek culvert. So we're pressing and pressing to get that going. So that's my report. Thank you.
Any questions, Sarah?
I bet she could hear me.
You would be surprised. I can hear you, I just can't understand it. That came out.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I feel that way sometimes too. Erica, since there's no Parks and Rec meeting this month, that means they will not officially accept Christina's resignation until next month, which means you won't be filling the position until after that meeting. Is that true? They're nodding yes. And are we still expecting that Davy's question last meeting about Community Day? Do we still expect it will be held on its regular first, second, whatever it is, Saturday in May?
I don't know definitively.
And you're not
quite
going to have a
honestly.
fully staffed
Yeah,
EAC, Parks and Rec, until
I understand.
April at the soonest?
Yeah. Oh,
Are
Parks and
you-
Rec, March, beginning of March.
March.
Right.
March. Are you soliciting other volunteers to help with the Community Day besides the Parks people?
I have not.
Okay.
But perhaps the chair.
Any other comments from the audience? I will move on. Next, I have a letter from John Eldridge, a letter of resignation from the zoning hearing board as alternate, so he can join the elected position of auditor.
I make a motion.
Do we need a motion to accept it?
I make a motion to accept the resignation of John Eldridge as zoning board hearing alternate for West Vincent Township.
I'll second the motion.
Before we vote on, John, thank you for your service. I'm sure it was interesting, but those zoning hearings got a bit long, didn't they?
Yeah.
So thank you, though. Any comments from the audience? Sarah?
Does this mean you're now... Dear John,
What just
when are
yell?
you getting portable microphones for me and Brian? Okay. So does this mean you are now free? Not that Brian, the other Brian.
Oh, no, this might be.
This is more fun. It isn't. So does this mean you are now free to schedule the auditors meeting?
I believe it does.
Has it been scheduled?
No, I've been in touch. We need to go through this process, and if Mr. Eldridge taking care of another task, oath of office. Ms. Altman also has to take care of that, and I'll be scheduling away.
I bet Jill could do it tonight.
You just said your auditing was, I thought you just said you were starting your auditing.
A little bit different. The elected auditor position for the township, there's a meeting that takes place to certify the mileage for the year, or if there's a supervisor who also held a township position, that auditing board will set the wage rate for the township. So that's the purpose of the elected auditor of the second-class township code.
It's just an agreement to put us in line with the federal guidelines for mileage reimbursements, or 54.9%, something like that.
54.5 cents.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Yes, Sarah.
And since the second-class township code said it should be held the day after the organization meeting, and when I asked about that in January, Erica said she thought it would needed to be by the end of the month. I thought that meant January. Is there no time frame, although the code says do it the next day? If you don't do it, it doesn't matter when you do it?
Joe, you want to answer that?
Yeah.
Code says you have to do it the next day, but you don't have auditors lined up and they can't meet. They can't meet.
That's your problem, isn't it? I mean, shouldn't they be lined up?
Yes, thank you, Jean.
I don't understand your reasons.
For the record, my resignation was handed in today. We had a meeting last Thursday, and I got it Friday, and I brought it back today. So nothing could have happened. I couldn't resign before today. I couldn't be an auditor before today or tomorrow.
It's not just John.
But
It wasn't just you.
Thank you, John. So we have a motion. Any other questions on John's resignation? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? No. Barney, by the way, asked me to start asking if there's any nays, just to, and I guess I should have all along, so thank you, Bert. Next is the Toll Brothers final surety reduction, request number 3 for the Ewing Track Phase 2.
I move that the board approve the final surety bond reduction request number 3 for the Ewing Track Carriage Home South sanitary sewer in the amount of $61,398.76.
I'll second the motion.
Brian, would you mind taking the microphone and explaining this? This is a little different than most of them are. And Jim Hill might have some questions.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is the final release of the sanitary sewer escrow as approved by Upper Euclid Township for what was remaining as housekeeping items. There was nothing in this escrow that was constructability. It was the final. This was the final release for the retainage, the legal fees, and the engineering fees for the sanitary sewer system that was constructed as part of the Ewing Tract.
Explain,
So the sewer system is constructed in West Vincent Township, but the system itself is inspected, owned, and maintained by Upper Euclid Township. So the initial request for release goes to Upper Euclid Township since it's their system. They approve it, send it approved back to West Vincent Township. West Vincent Township is the bondholder since the bond was posted as part of the overall land development. So this is just a mere formality to release the bond back to the toll brothers.
thank you. Jim, did you understand that?
I do.
Does it make sense to you? You have any questions?
Could you define exactly the land, phase 2? Can you define that?
Phase 2. This phase was the Carriage Home South. So this was the final release for the sanitary sewer constructed and accepted by Upper Euclid Township in the Carriage Home South portion. So that's old. This is the only piece that's been released.
And Jim, do you know where that is? Does it have street names?
We okay? Any other questions for Brian? Yes.
I knew nothing about this, but how did West Vincent become the recipient of this sewage from another township?
It's not. There actually are sewers going up to,
So the way the plan was designed and approved is all the sewage for the Ewing Tract is being treated in Upper Euclid. And most of the disposal is located in areas of the property that are located in West Vincent. All the sewage flows from West Vincent go to Upper Euclid, are treated and then are disposed of.
Okay.
So the disposal, that's why it's all theirs, because they're actually maintaining and operating the system as well.
It's pretty
Sorry, I
screwed.
have no idea what was going on, it just sounded strange.
That's the way it was approved and agreed upon back when the development was started.
Any other questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? No nays. Next is the VGK-1 Trust Resolution 90, or 9-2018 for the preliminary final subdivision plan.
I move the board approve resolution 9-2018, awarding primary final approval for the VGK-1 trust, the subdivision of UBI number 25-3-69 and 25-3. Okay.
I'll second the
Wait,
motion.
I'm not done. Dash 69-1 in the 7 lots.
I'll second the motion.
This is a 90-acre subdivision that they're going to leave one that's approximately 21, 22 acres, and then 6 remaining at 10-plus acres. And has this been approved by the planning commission?
Yes, and you'll note the conditions of the approval and the waivers requested, and the applicant is here this evening.
Yeah, if you want to see it, I can show it to you.
We already have copies of it.
Well, but
I do have a question.
Sure.
On, I guess it's page 2 of the resolution. It says the applicant must complete all easements and corresponding maintenance and sewer agreements, including but not limited to all this stuff, before recording of the plan. Until the plan gets recorded, there's really no subdivision. So what I would have to do, I think, if you want to have something put on the deed, it wouldn't be on the individual deeds, it would be on the existing deed to the property. And when we talked about it, it had something to do with the ownership and the management of the open space or greenway. So I would propose, if you want to have this done before the plan is recorded, right? Then it would have to be something put on the existing deed, which would be something like, in case of subdivision, there will be a note placed on individual deeds to lots as they are sold to restrict ownership, maintenance, use, and location of greenway to that which is delineated on the recorded plans.
It doesn't go on a deed. These are separate agreements, and
Okay.
separate easements. So what happens is, you give them to us to review, and give us the original copies. The plan gets recorded, and then these easements get recorded after the plan's recorded.
Okay, so it's not before the plan.
You give it
Okay, so I can
you
give
give
it-
it to us before the plan, but they get recorded after the plan's recorded.
Okay, got you. So what I would do is write something up and you take a look at it and say, hey, I like it or not.
Right.
Okay. The only other thing, I've taken care of everything, we had taken care of everything on the plan submissions from your review. The only other thing that we have to add is we have to delineate the rights of way area on each plan to be dedicated to the township. So we just put a note on the plan and an arrow saying this is it, right?
We can deal with that outside of, you and I can deal with that separately on the plan, to get the plan ready for final approval after tonight's action by the board.
Oh, okay, because that's the only other question I
To
have.
answer that quickly, you show the rights of way on the plan.
Yeah.
I also want separate deeds executed for those rights of way, and I hold them until the board accepts dedication.
Okay.
We get them done up front, so we know they're approved, they're properly done, and we have them in our possession when the plan's released.
Okay.
But they don't get filed until after the board accepts dedication.
All right, we have the legal descriptions and everything, so
That's what
we
we
just
need.
turn it into a deed then?
Yeah, and we can help you with that, we have forms and stuff.
Okay, because I have no idea.
Yes, so we'll do, I have all your information after tonight's action on the resolution. I'll be back in touch with you about what we need as far as copies and
Okay.
finalizing everything to prepare for this, give it to the solicitor for final preparation for the court.
We'll walk you through the whole thing and help you.
Okay, very good, thanks.
Any other comments?
Thank you, John. So, Brian, we had a couple of things that the planning commission wanted to make sure those supervisors were aware of. And since it sounds like John might not be aware of them, George or Brian, can you remember what they were? One was something Erica will bring in after our minutes are approved. That was the thing about the 3 driveways, about the flag lot business. So if they haven't heard about that yet, right?
There's a heads up.
They have the heads up? Okay, but the other, do you remember what the other consideration was? There was something we wanted to be sure was pointed out to the supervisors.
The right of way.
It was the right of way.
Question on accepting dedication right
Correct.
away.
Right.
Anything else, Jim?
No, that's it.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Any other comments from the audience? Thank you, Brian. Let's call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Next is Brent Coed Farm Subdivision 4.
I move that the board approve resolution 10-2018 for acceptance of deed to dedication of ultimate rights of way to legal rights of way of Brent Coed Farm.
I'll second the motion.
Somebody going to explain that one?
Brian? I'm going to need you to explain this resolution regarding the Brent Coed. I apologize.
Brian, I'll call you tomorrow, okay?
Okay.
But
I believe, Mr. Chairman, this is the resolution for the approval of the deeds of dedication for subdivision 4. The dedication of the rights of way
Right.
Yes.
for the roads of Bryn Coed for the subdivision 4. Subdivision 4 has been approved and recorded, so now it's up to accepting the dedication of the right of way along the frontages for subdivision 4.
Could you elaborate on which frontages those are?
Here, it's St. Matthews Road, Flowing Springs Road, Beaver Hill Road, and that's that.
So why would we accept dedication of St. Matthew's Road since it's a state road?
There are portions here, right of way.
I mean, I understand Flowing Springs and Beaver Hill.
It's part of the process for Bryn Coed, we took dedication of all the pieces.
Say that
I
again, Brian.
mean, it's a good point. How do you take dedication of a state road?
It's the additional piece for the ultimate right of way, because you can, your township ordinance permits or requires a larger right of way on roads than the township minimum, the state minimum. And you have the right as a township to get the rest for potential trails,
Right.
potential for passageways, bikeways, anything you want to do in that right of way.
So how much additional right of way is this?
It varies depending on what,
Yeah.
depending on the road.
Were these right of ways designated on the plans of the
Yes.
planning commission? So
Yes.
I asked that because you know there were some things that we saw that changed before they got to final.
Yes, these right of ways were delineated from the start on the plans.
Okay.
And each of the 4 projects, as they came before the board, they offered the rights of way that were part of those projects.
I must have missed a lot of meetings. I don't remember all of those coming before the board.
Most of the right of way was done in the first subdivision. It touched the largest piece. Subdivision 4 was on the other side of the road, separate from the lot line change.
But you did a lot line change in that one after the planning commission saw it.
Not in subdivision 4. Subdivision 4 is a standalone subdivision application, and these are the 3 roads that these are the 3 roads that are the borders to that subdivision. So because those parts of subdivision 4 has touched these roads, these pieces are the roads being offered for dedication as part of the recordation of subdivision 4.
Okay. Any other questions for Brian on this? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any nays? No nays. Sorry I ruined your day, Brian. Next is the old business, Open Space Advisory Board appointment. Do I have a motion on this?
I'll make the motion to appoint Sarah Schick to Open Space Review Board as the Planning Commission liaison.
Second?
What would be the expiration date? The reason I say that, because it's a 5-year term on the board of, or on the Open Space Board, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yet the Planning Commission only has, well, it's multiple. So
Right.
should this be an expiration of 2018, or should it be a 5-year term?
The Open Space Advisory Board ordinance allows for that planning commission member to fulfill the term, even when they're not a planning commission member,
What's that?
and they're still on that Open Space Board.
I thought it's not tied to the planning commission?
It's tied, yes, yeah, as far as being a liaison, but once you are on, you don't come off just, as.
So then another person from the planning commission then gets on again? Because every year they have to put somebody from a liaison type person from the planning
They get
commission
to-
on.
It's not a liaison,
No.
I believe it's a member.
But it has to
It's
be
a
a,
member who's also the liaison.
but basically
Yes.
we're gonna need
Yeah.
a open space person that's on the board of the planning commission.
You do, but once that committee role, when you have that term, the
Yeah.
ordinance provides the ability for that member to fulfill that even when they've expired, their term on the planning commission has expired.
Okay, so who do we have on the open space, or not, the planning commission that's there for 5 years, if the term for.
No,
It's
but-
not.
Nobody
It's four.
planning commission has 4-year terms.
4-year term?
That's why,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, then we should probably be picking at least somebody with a 4-year term.
And that's what I'm.
That makes sense.
It doesn't make sense to me that the
Okay.
terms don't make.
They
Well,
don't
the
match
terms will
up.
never match up.
That
And
seems
what-
dumb. Why is that?
What does the ordinance say?
Well, the ordinance, I guess, mandates that somebody from the planning commission be on the open space.
And once somebody qualifies by virtue of being on the planning commission, then what does the ordinance say?
I don't know whether it does that. Joe, have we confused it? Sarah's on the planning commission, and when's your term expire? This year?
2018.
2018. She is going to be the planning commission member that's on the open space committee, and they have a 4 or 5-year term. 4-year?
Planning commission 4,
4.
open space 5.
Open space 5 years. So how do we rectify next year, or 2 years, or 3 years, when the planning commission member's term expires in 5 years?
I don't know why it was ever set up.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Kind of dumb. So we can change that, right? Just fix it?
Maybe not tonight.
No.
You'd have to advertise it, right?
Oh,
Yeah, I think we should.
You'd have to figure out how to rectify it, what we want to do with it.
It's the composition, language regarding the composition and the terms
Okay.
of the board.
Well, I think we should hold off on this until we decide how to handle it. I'm not ready to vote on it.
Well, Mike, you could appoint me for 1 year so that that committee can.
Well, I don't know if we're allowed to
This
appoint
is-
for 1
no,
year.
This is
Are we?
going to be, and probably has been, an ongoing problem.
Problem, yeah.
No, it hasn't, because, do you need me to come to the microphone, John? It hasn't been a problem because you haven't been operating under that ordinance until recently.
Oh.
So it wasn't a problem before.
When did we do that ordinance?
Since John's been up there.
Oh. Okay.
I
John,
mean,
it's your
it's an
fault,
old
yeah.
ordinance, isn't it?
I thought
It just was.
It must have been
started
updated to
paying
do it this
attention
way.
to it.
When,
We can't do it for 1 year, right? The
No,
record
I mean-
says 5,
Oh,
so.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my.
Well, you know, there's
microphone
an easy thing. You could plan to reappoint me to the planning commission next year, and then it wouldn't be a problem.
That's true. But
So
we don't know what that's, what
It would
the
still, they
decision's
still
gonna be back
wouldn't
then.
match up.
Yeah, it would.
No,
Yes, it would.
It would, she'd get another 4 years.
4 plus, 1 plus 4 is 5.
I say we table it, and we look at that ordinance.
Well, we have that we have the ordinance that's in place, and the Open Space Committee reestablished themselves in the last year and a half. Our previous supervisor was on that committee, and we found that we had to get that, fixed.
Yeah, we didn't look at this
So that's
scenario.
why, yeah, it's going back to that original ordinance,
Okay.
so.
I apologize, Sarah. Can you wait for 2 weeks?
Does the Open Space Committee meet before then? No, I think
You can
it's
still
probably...
attend the open space meetings.
I did, but they didn't have a quorum because they needed another appointee at the last meeting. So,
Next meeting is the 20th before they meet.
So I'm in agreement with Mike. How do we, there's a motion and a second. Or is there a second?
No, they take a vote.
I didn't think there was, you didn't say.
There was
I
a
did
motion.
second, I seconded it.
Well, you would table, if you want, you can table the motion, but I don't even understand why you have an ordinance. Why you have an ordinance for an open space committee?
I don't know.
Because when it's established, it has to be in accordance with the open space laws, so that the operations, there's a clear process that we follow, so.
Do you understand?
But why can't that be by resolution?
Oh, sure, hey.
I don't know why we have to be passing ordinances for committees.
you might have to rescind the ordinance when you pass
Yeah,
the
once it's an
resolution.
ordinance, I gotta rescind it with an ordinance.
Well, let's table it.
Okay,
Do you understand?
I do understand.
You'll work with Joe or Rob and
Sure.
figure out which way to do it and get it
Okay.
on the agenda for next week.
So we need to know what you wanna do.
Well, I
mean, if
think
you-
we want the terms to
We
match
want
up.
to match up.
Well, the
It's-
terms, if you just say a planning commission member has to be on the open space, the terms will never match up.
Well, can we change the term of the open space?
Make
You'd
it
have
a
to
You
change
can
position.
have the planning commission appointed, it'd be 1 year on the open space, and you reappoint someone every year.
Every year, right.
Other,
That would be the
Make it
correct way of doing it.
Liaison position.
Yeah,
But we'd
right.
have to go back to
Right,
the
okay.
open space resolution.
Right.
But we need to know what you, I
Okay.
don't know what the fix, I know what you want
but
to do. with it.
Mike, you're fixing out to extend the planning commission to 5 years, and you'd have to appoint the
No,
person
I would do
you
it
want
to
at
be
the
a 1-year
beginning of the
term.
5-year
I'd make it a
period.
1-year term.
The rest of the committee is a 5-year term.
Is that the only?
Okay, so we make it a 1-year term for
It's only
everybody?
liaison.
Is that the only liaison planning? Isn't there liaisons from other?
There's a
This is
liaison
more
from-
than a liaison.
It's not a liaison.
Could
No,
we make
but-
this
Mandate.
a voting liaison position if we change the open space resolution?
George is,
You can do it as a ad hoc committee, you can do it as a voting member, you can do it as a liaison, you can do whatever you want to do with it.
Okay.
I just need to know what you want to do with it, so I know what the
but
fix
John, George Dolcinos is correct. There's also an EAC person who is appointed. So the 5 people on the open space, 1 planning commission, 1 EAC, and 3 other.
Okay, so now we have to look at the EAC,
Well,
or we have to solve the open space one, and that will solve all the others. Okay.
If
If
we
it
make
needs
it a
to be
liaison,
solved.
Well, we'll change
liaison
the open
position,
space to a 1-year
then the
term,
idea
and
is
then
the
it
planning
always
commission
works.
having a
I think it
voting
is
member with
personally, Mike.
Why? Everybody on the open space can be reappointed every year. Don't we have one that does one every year? Don't we have a committee that's
Ag security.
Is that the only one?
Yeah.
How come I know this stuff and you're the supervisor?
Just look into that. It might be simple if we make it a liaison, a voting
Okay.
liaison position.
Okay. That's right, everyone's different,
That would be the best, yeah.
so, okay.
That way it's up to the planning commission. That was the whole idea of the planning commission, to get them to have
And they
a member
did.
that they want on.
But
And
we should
they
also,
I know that.
we should also do the same thing for the EAC, if that's the same case.
If
Well,
it's
It's
the
not a
same case,
liaison.
I'm not
His
sure
term
where that
is
looks.
not up yet.
No, we're trying to change it so it's a liaison.
A voting liaison in
Yeah.
this case, and I'm not sure of the AEC, I have to look at it, so we'll look at it.
Okay.
You got it, and you'll let us know before the next meeting?
But-
Okay.
Yes.
So you're thinking you want a voting liaison, but not a member.
Correct.
But it's,
No, a
What
Well,
voting,
if-
be still a member, though.
it would be a person that's,
so you just really want to make it a 1-year term for the
No, it could be
people
a- it could be
outside.
It's up to
It
the
could be-
planning commission.
Yes, it's a recommendation from the planning commission or EAC, how long. So next year, the planning commission would say, yes, you stay on another year. Next year, another year, next year. It's whenever, as long as it can be. It could be 4 years, it could be 1 year, it could be 3 years.
Why?
Because the planning commission's choosing the
Persuaded.
liaison.
I know, I just,
Yeah, why
maybe
is
we need like a drawing.
voting members and liaisons are different things.
Yeah.
No, they can't make it.
I mean, if you have someone who's on the planning commission at the open space committee meeting, they're obviously going to report back to the planning commission.
Continuity.
So the liaison part just confuses things.
Continuity and knowing, you know, what we're-
Figure it out and put forth a recommendation to fix it.
All right,
You said with the ordinance or anything?
sure.
Joe, do we need to take any action to rescind the
Come
motion?
to meetings
You need
more
a
often.
motion to table.
I move to table this motion.
Second?
As you can tell.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And I suggested table for any, because I'm not sure where we're going with this.
Yeah, sure.
Next is new business Chester County Vision Partnership Grant Program.
Erica, would you notify the open space committee that there's, it's up in.
No, it's not that time.
Oh, no, it's not. I want to explain this, so, okay. All right, the Chester County has a grant program, vision partnership program. Discussed this a few times in the fall. Right before I was on leave, there was an application discussed regarding the trees. Timber harvesting and trees as it relates to definition and enforcement actions or planning guidelines, all of those things that are in our subdivision and zoning ordinances related to trees, heritage trees, and just trying to take a good look at that. And this is really based on a conversation and recommendations from our EAC. So Vic Laubach and Ed Thurkoff, I know, came before the board. There was an application put in. We did not get that grant. Now, the feedback we're getting from the county at this point is that they're interested in doing some work on our tree ordinances, but they're nervous about the timber harvesting aspect. And for right now, the county doesn't want to take a lead in that regard. But there are obviously aspects of our ordinances that we need to have updated. I think we've all discussed that. Now, in looking at that, a massive update really is something that needs to be warranted after our comp plan is done. We talked about that. I think that's the county's recommendation also. In looking at a potential opportunity to reapply and make this a little bit more competitive is to focus in and meet with the county to decide what were aspects of that application that we could, just make it a little more palpable, because it is a need here and it is a recommendation from our EAC. But another thing that's rising to the top is to look, and this is just something, a recommendation I would put out there, is some of our cultural and historic ordinances we could take a look at that too. And that's just in regards to trying to really get a handle. I think West Vincent, in terms of Chester County, we could take a better look at that. What we have in place now has not been strictly followed for some years.
That's totally different than
Yeah, I was going to
the
ask you
trees.
that. What
It is.
Two different grants then.
It would be different. So what I would ask is I could go back and I could do a little work and see if it's something worth pursuing and come back. But the application deadline is February 21st, and I would have to meet with the county to see if we'd be interested.
Okay,
But
so you're going to do that, meet with the county, and then,
that's what I would propose, is to meet with the county and see what would be most competitive to them, based on our needs right now. And I'm talking about, there's a variety of things that we need to take care of, but these are items from the EAC that they've really been pushing to see if they can have that funded.
so you're going to go to the county, and then you're going to propose the historic versus the tree,
And-
or a little bit of both?
And a little bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about
Historic trees.
There you go.
Hey, but it's the truth, it's the truth. I mean, the heritage trees and all these different aspects, these are things that are in our historic atlas, and, moving forward, we've got a lot of work going on in the township that a better defined process or ordinances that are made more clear, could help. That's just kind of feedback I'm getting from staff and from committees. So if anybody wants to, I hope I'm not misrepresenting anything, but I think yeah.
If you're looking for us to give you the thumbs up on visiting or with the county vision partnership, that's fine.
Okay.
I just, with trees, Jim Helmut and I have talked in the past, and I think there's some, just from my opinion,
Right.
the movement towards saving some things, but not everything.
Sure.
And these grants usually have a requirement for acceptance to get the grant money.
I understand.
And I'm just putting that caution in the wind.
Yep.
That's why you meet first.
Right, and I heard that sentiment months ago as well, and I understand that, so.
It's all right.
But,
Yes, Susan Elks wants to meet with people before they go to the trouble of putting a grant together.
exactly.
How does this differ from the grant that the township now has with Rick Trailings looking at our tree ordinances? Is it redundant? Is it on top of it? Since he's not done, how can we apply for
Well-
something else if we don't know what we got from him?
Agreed, Sarah, you bring up a good point. Rick Trailings is working on really more focus on water quality, and it's really his focus on trees. He's stretching a little bit because we said, we have some work we'd like you to focus on, but water quality is really, that's where the funding is for that ordinance project. But I understand to try and, when we are meeting with Rick and saying, listen, while you're looking at this scope of work, we have other things we may want to do as well. So that's another funding opportunity that, we have that grant, and we are, pursuing that and moving forward with that project, but it's not quite as specific as I think some of the other needs out there. But
Okay, and focused on repairing buffers and stream setbacks and
Exactly.
protecting steep slopes.
Right.
A lot of things that would be in a tree ordinance anyway.
right.
Okay. The other thing you mentioned, the need to do something about our cultural and historic ordinances. Harriet and I were at a meeting with Chester County Planning Commission and the Chester County Historic Preservation Network a couple of weeks ago. And we were again told how good our historic preservation ordinance is, one of the best in the counties. But what you said, Erica, was we were having some problems with implementing it.
Yep.
Rewriting it doesn't necessarily help implementation.
Oh, it may not, but it would be a study. It may not necessarily, because I don't have this all fleshed out. And it was an idea to try and better hone in on the needs I see here in the township. So, and this would be something that we look at in the fall, but I just see us, in moving forward, we may want to take a look at
Are you
that.
talking about implementing or enforcement?
Let's ask Erica what she meant when she said we're having some problems with our current historic ordinance.
I wouldn't say problems per se, but I'd like to have a really, I'd like to have a clear procedure between committees and staff and different things. And while it is somewhat, I just want to get a little focus on that.
Any other comments from the audience? So you want us to give you the thumbs up on pursuing
It's
grants?
just really a report on that, and,
She's just gonna meet with
yeah.
them, see what's available, what's
I
not.
think you have our blessing.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we're going to turn over the meeting to the public comment on non-agenda items. John?
Comments. I haven't seen the December 31 statements appear yet. Do you know when they'll be available?
We're working on them.
They could
We
be,
are.
Pardon?
the format that they've been in is tedious,
I know.
okay?
Yes.
So, I mean, I could put a statement up tomorrow, a general one, that won't look like the old ones.
Okay, because years ago, they said, well, we aren't going to release it
Until the
we
audit.
get our audits done, but they never made the township statements match the audited statements. And so there
No.
was sort of a gap there.
Yeah, I think I should.
It was, they just released, the township always just handed out what they gave the auditors unaudited and never corrected it.
Well,
Well,
no,
no,
I mean,
but that-
starting last year or the year before, we had the audited reports up there.
You want the audited report to be the audited report. You always want to go to that as that's, the true audited facts and numbers. So the report itself is, we're working through the reconciliation and giving you that month picture, so.
But a draft December 31st statement I could put there for the whole year.
Okay,
I can do that tomorrow, and it just won't look like the other ones,
okay.
okay? And then the audit will come through, and I'm working on trying to do it the
Okay, but
same.
last year when the auditor said, like, the amount of principal paid on the bond didn't match our statements, and then they, for one other reason, from that comment, they submitted revised statements. But the township, on the other hand, never
Stayed at
submitted
the old
a revised statement.
Right. Well, that's the same thing as the bills list. We put up the draft bills
Yeah.
list. And I don't know, have we been doing it? Because before I asked that the draft statements get removed and the finals go up.
We've
I
been
know.
doing the draft right now, I know.
Okay.
Well,
So
And then
it's
get
Yeah,
correct.
December 31st.
When that audit's
Yeah.
done, then the final, the correct one should be put back up to the draft one off.
But are you gonna post the township December 31st?
Yeah, I'll just run it. I'll put it up there.
Any other comments, Sarah?
Is there anybody back there?
I'm sorry?
Is anyone else?
There's
want-
people back there, but they don't
They
have their
don't
hands
have to
raised.
answer. Okay, this one's for Joe McGrory. Joe, Brian and I went around in circles a couple of planning commission meetings ago because I was surprised to find that a lot line that was on the early plans that we saw for Brinkohead Farm was no longer on the plan. I was still thinking there was a 7-acre lot along St. Matthews Road next to a 17-acre, and all of a sudden there was a 24-acre. And I think you told me that it didn't, once it's out of the planning commission's hands, it doesn't need to come back to us. And I thought if it was something like a lot line change, subdivision, or removal of a lot line, that might, I didn't look it up in the MPC or anything, but shouldn't that come back to the planning commission? Or can that be unilaterally done by, well, no, not by the board, trilaterally done by the board, the engineer?
It depends on the magnitude of the change. If the change constitutes a whole new plan, rather than just an amendment, then it comes back to the planning commission. So it depends on the magnitude. So it's a case-by-case basis.
And of course, there's no obligation to let the planning commission know that the plan the supervisors are approving is different from the one they reviewed.
So it's always good practice to have communication with everyone involved with the plan.
Would
But,
you suggest that in your next executive session?
I suggest what? Good communication?
Good communication
I
with
can
the planning
suggest that right
commission.
now. Everyone should communicate.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments from the audience?
Are you finished?
I have a motion to,
Motion to adjourn?
Wait, are you aware of the kerfluffle about the barn?
no, I know there's a kerfuffle about, I can't even say it, but about a barn, but I don't know about this barn.
It starts with a K-E-R.
F-U-F-F-L-E, or E-L, one of those. At the EAC meeting this Wednesday, there's going to be a discussion about a demolition permit that's been come into the engineer's office. And I think it would be an interesting discussion. We would like to have that barn, if the new owner, new buyer, she doesn't like what I'm saying. We want to discuss how we can get that barn at least mothballed, stabilized, so that sometime in the future, if there's someone's got a use for it, it's a beautiful barn. It dates probably from the 1850s, maybe a little older.
20s.
And we're being told it has to be demolished because a possible buyer wants it down. And the Historic Resources Committee would rather have it be protected.
This is on Brinkohead Farm?
Yes.
And The EAC will be asked to give more time for us. There's a certain amount of time that you have to respond to people when they come in with a request for a demolition or various other things. And we're going to be asking the EAC to ask you folks to give us more time to find what it would cost to stabilize the barn, what it would, other possible uses for it, rather than just knocking down one of our nice old barns.
Could
So-
that potentially jeopardize the sale?
Who knows?
Oh.
We've not spoken to the buyer, and
Well, I guess you could call National Land Trust and ask them if you buy the property.
I have spoken
they
to the
are
buyer.
coming. They are coming to the meeting on Wednesday.
The buyers are?
No,
National Land
National Land
Trust.
says, and they expected that there would be a public meeting about this,
Okay.
and they are going to have it. And I think we have another comment.
I'm Suzanne Bender. I'm the person who owns the property right in front of that on St. Matthews Road. I fixed up 1543 St. Matthews Road. Can everybody hear me? I don't know if I'm speaking loudly enough. I have a fear of microphone.
Sarah's gonna get mad at me unless I make you use the
Oh,
microphone.
God. You're not mad, are you,
No,
Sarah?
no.
Okay.
Just check, keep making sure you got John's attention.
I think I do. That property is contiguous to the property that I have. At the moment, I think my house is probably one of the most famous houses in all of Westminster. Everybody knows it, and everybody knows, are you the person who fixed up that house?
The John Ralston house, John.
The John Ralston house. The barn in question is a very large barn, and the way the property was subdivided, this is long before I came along, I think this is probably in the 1960s. It's almost, it's almost like it was done punitively, because the big barn, there are two barns on this property. There's a small barn, which is on my parcel of 3.3 acres, and there's this much larger barn, which is the barn in question. The bigger barn is literally not even from here to that table. That's how close it is to my property. So we love the Natural Lands Trust, and when they came along, I asked Molly Marston if there would be a possibility for me to buy a few acres. Do I really want the barn? I don't have horses. It's an enormous barn, but it does have great significant value, and it's like in my backyard. So I entered into discussions with someone named Brian Sundermeyer from the Natural Lands Trust, and the discussions kept changing. Originally, we thought that 7-acre parcel, I think, was supposed to go to me. In the meantime, my builder and I brought Brian in, and we said, this barn we were afraid it wasn't going to last the next winter because it's not at all watertight. It needs to either have a new roof or certainly to have the old roof mended on a temporary basis. And one wall, part of one wall, and I don't know if it's north or south, I don't know the directions.
East.
The east wall was we thought it was about to collapse. It had bowed in. We took Brian inside the barn. And my builder, who's not an expert or anything, but pointed out that some of the beams, which were original beams in that building, looked like they needed attention desperately. And we were afraid of, if there was snow on the roof or whatever, that it would cause it to collapse. Brian flatly told me, we are the Natural Lands Trust. We are in the business of land preservation, not building restoration. We said, but OMG, this is still a very historic building, and you guys own it. So if I buy it, I said, can you give me a little allowance on the price that you offered to sell me the 7 acres for? Because really this barn, it makes sense for me to have it because it's kind of on my property. No. I said, if I'm going to get the barn, I'm going to need a little money to try to at least mothball it, at least preserve it so it wouldn't fall down. No, absolutely not. They offered me an agreement of sale, and then they came back like a month later saying things have changed. To this day, I'm a lawyer, but to this day, I can't tell you what those things are. He said, we can still go through with it, but it's going to cost you more money. And honestly, I can't tell you, it had something to do with the zoning or the taxes or something. You would think that they would have had this figured out when they gave me the first agreement of sale. So, okay. The next thing that happened was all these people started coming onto my property through my drive. There's a drive that goes sort of all around, sort of like a semicircle around my property, and basically contiguous to the barn. one day I saw a group of people out there, and one of them was Brian Sendermeyer, who I had known a little bit. And I went out there to talk to him to see like what's going on, why are you on my property? He was trying to be a good neighbor. He actually ignored me. We were about 5 feet apart. I saw he was on a cell phone, so I stepped back to give him some room. And when he got off the phone, he just turned his back on me and walked away. So I thought that was a little odd. So he's been sort of strange with me from the beginning. A few months ago, there was another man on my property, and I went out to talk with him, and he said I think his name is Jay Rinaldi. He's a potential buyer of the 28 acres, including the barn. I said, what are you going to do with the barn? He said, I don't want the barn. And I said, well, then why did you buy this? Why did you enter into an agreement of sale? He said, well, I just, I brought some people out here. One person told me it would cost $300,000 to make it pristine. And I said, well, what would you do with it? And he said, I don't know, maybe I would store old cars in there, or I would use it as a venue for public functions. And I said, well, I would have a problem with that. That's not going to happen. He said, well, I don't even have that much money. So he said, I talked to Brian. Brian offered to tear it down. And I went like, what? He said, my agreement of sale has a contingency that says if that building is standing on the property, I can back out of the agreement of sale. And I said, how in the world would they tear it down? You'd have to come out and see the topography. It's a barn with a lower level, and so the property kind of goes like this, where my property it's kind of hard to explain. He said Brian told him that they would just have somebody literally come in and collapse the four walls in on each other, and I guess just bury it. It's still, I've never done work like that, but that seems ridiculous to me. So I got in touch with Brian, and I said, all I asked you for was to give me some consideration to essentially lower the price that I would have bought the 7 acres for, so I would have a little extra money to do the repair work on the barn. And he just wouldn't answer me. And it seems to me then I also found out from this current potential buyer that the price per acre was less than what Brian offered to sell me the 7 acres for.
Well, it's a
with
bigger
the barn.
lot. You get a price
It's a
break,
bigger
bigger
lot,
lots.
but they have to pay to tear the barn down, apparently. That's an NLT's plan.
Yeah, I don't know what the numbers are.
Yeah, well, I don't either. So all I'm trying to save the barn, and I'd be willing to take it, all I asked the NLT to do was just give me a little consideration.
And this new owner wants that, how big is this barn?
How big would you say?
Do you have that?
100 by
copy of the
100?
report?
I mean, it's not,
It's enormous, yeah.
It is.
Normal size of an 1820 barn.
okay.
It's big.
It's a big.
It's
So, I mean, would the new owner
Place for
sell
horses.
you an acre?
I
Can't
don't-
be subdivided at that.
It could be subdivided if the NLT says it could be subdivided, and that
That's what I was wondering.
Well, you and the new,
Is there
That's what the
access?
new, was the potential, it's possible that we could enter into that.
I
if
guess it
that's-
depends
Or
on
with
what
NLT,
gets written
doesn't
into
matter
that
who.
easement.
Well, I've gotten in touch with the NLT, like.
Well, you want a discount. They don't want to give it a discount.
Well, what they want to do, instead of giving me a discount, is they want to pay to have it torn down. That's what doesn't make sense.
But somehow the numbers must work for them.
I don't think they do. I think.
Well, they're the only ones that would know.
But this board isn't going to have an opinion on
Yeah, we can't.
what's right for them.
We just don't want you to tear the barn down, or to
I
agree to
get
the
that.
demolition.
That we
Well,
have
we
an
won't be
opinion.
tearing the barn down.
Thank you.
I don't have.
I mean, he will be,
dimensions.
the owner.
Well, I know you physically
NLT.
won't be, but I just didn't want you to agree.
I don't have dimensions of the
I'd
barn.
love to see this.
But I've got pictures.
I have pictures on.
Can I keep them, or do I have to get them from her?
She can send you
I'll
that.
send it to you. I'll send you a copy of that. I'll send,
All 3 of them.
oh, you want it
them?
too? Sure. Okay. I'll get your email.
So the thing about the demolition permit of a historic structure is that the owner needs to demonstrate hardship, just like variances on the zoning hearing board. And this doesn't sound like one of those hardship things. The EA,
So the new owner would not have to do a thing to this barn. Would not have to spend a dime.
it's his barn.
So he doesn't have to stabilize it or anything.
The new owner will not go through with the agreement of sale unless the barn is gone.
No, but she's talking about our ordinance.
No.
Hardship.
At this point, now that the township's aware of it, they may say, we would like you to do something to stabilize it so that it does not violate
Would that be
another
a hardship?
ordinance.
Would that be a hardship?
It's a
No,
safety-
we have
it's a
another
safety
ordinance
issue.
that prohibits demolition by neglect. And if the barn is not stabilized, then it
It's
could
neglect.
become subject to that.
That's correct.
So eventually.
So it is a hardship. You just demonstrated a hardship to
No.
that owner.
Mike?
Yes, because he has to stabilize it. If he doesn't, then it's neglect. And then we force him to. So either way, it's a hardship. He's going to have to spend money for the structure.
He's
Has
not
to be
going
that
to
way.
complete the sale, is what I'm telling you.
Yeah, because he doesn't want the,
He doesn't want the bond.
right, he doesn't want, that's why I don't understand why NLT or somebody doesn't say, hey, you take an acre of this with the barn. That just makes sense.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you, but,
Okay.
you know.
The NLT has a buyer for the stone from the barn. So it's not that
There
it
you
would
go.
just get buried on site. They have somebody who wants to move
I know who
in
that is.
and build another barn. And it's possible they have a buyer for the timbers from the barn. We've heard that they do, and then we heard that they didn't. But very likely, since it's an 1820, 1830 barn, there's lots of market. The document that Harriet's going to send you is an assessment by Peter Benton and Bob Wise, and Kate Farnham's input is in it as well. They are the three historic architects, historian experts that we have on our Historic Resource Committee. And they have looked at the barn. It is not as bad as Suzanne's consultant. Well, they don't agree that it's as bad as Suzanne's consultant made it think. As far as the roof, they think since it's a metal roof, it's maybe. They are now trying to get somebody to come in and give them an estimate on the stabilization, the mothballing. And so that's part of the reason that the EAC is going to be looking to extend the review period on the demolition permit so that we can gather information and really make have a complete understanding of the situation. But it is an old barn. It's it's probably the most pristine of its size in the township. So it's an important historic function. The reason that John Ralston is important, he is a Revolutionary War hero who lived in Suzanne's house. And so his farmstead is a Class II historic structure and requires by our ordinance for us to protect it.
Okay, have you looked into the review process and how that's affected? How would this board, if it chose to do something with it?
So the EAC has opportunity to review the application, has additional time outside of just meeting this week that they can review and gather their thoughts and assessment. Ultimately, they need to provide, if the ultimate decision, the EAC said, you know what, we think there is a hardship and demolition permit, we're okay with the demolition, then it stays there. And that would just be forwarded to the zoning officer. If the recommendation is, we do not feel you should demolish the structure, that recommendation would then go before the board.
So the EAC needs to take action and make a recommendation to us one way or the other?
They will.
So that's where it stands right now?
Correct.
So we can do some looking at
Definitely.
letters or
It is
whatever, but that's where
definitely.
it's going. Jim, did you have your hand up?
Yep, I did. Just a clarification. Okay, so we do have a pretty good ordinance in this regard as it relates to historic structures and applying for demolition. Just to correct record so you don't jump down this avenue, economic hardship is not outlined in the ordinance. Other hardships are outlined in the ordinance. If it comes to you, it'll be because EAC said no, and the applicant didn't withdraw and wanted to pursue. I would urge the board to make sure you review the ordinance very closely as to what is the criteria. But the EAC will be using the criteria in the ordinance to look at the situation. And that's how they will do it. But it won't be, what's it cost and does NLT have the money? If it were, I bet NLT wouldn't like the outcome of that because they have plenty of money. So it's kind of hard, I mean, it's probably to NLT's favor that that criteria doesn't say whether or not they have a bank account. But that's not in our ordinance, and some other townships don't have that kind of ordinance. So earlier was a comment that we have a pretty good ordinance in this regard. It only, we do, it only relates to ability to demolish or apply for a demolition permit.
Thank you. Did I see another hand up?
I just had something to say. I just think this is what keeps West Vincent if we make it look like Euclid. I just like to see these odd, I don't care if the barn stands with, like she said, like an acre of ground around. It's just like a monument to where we came from, and it makes the whole community look more rural and aesthetic or whatever. I don't like this leveling and demolishing.
Got it, thank you. Harry, you had another comment?
I just wanted to emphasize, we're asking the EAC to make a recommendation that we get more time to gather data. This is not saying, we're not asking the EAC to say, no, you can't take it down, or yes, you can. at this
Not to
meeting.
make a decision this month.
We need to get some more information.
I'm not sure I understood that.
At the next board meeting, they're going to recommend that the EAC gets more time to review the situation.
Anybody, just to add a little something else, so the Historic Resources Subcommittee of the EAC, this is, you're saying is for gathering data, right? Okay, because that's a subcommittee of the EAC, which reports back, so. Okay, thanks.
Yes, we've had some more down.
No, I was just thinking. Any other questions? No other comments, and now I will accept a motion to end the meeting.
We already did. No, not to end. No? No? No. Oh, okay. I move that the,
Hurry.
I don't even know what to say. I move that the.
Adjourn the meeting.
Adjourn the meeting. There you go.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Just right, it's really required a vote on that. I think we could just go.
Have you signed the bank cards yet? No, you got to
I
get that.
have, they're with me tonight. Okay. And I need everybody, so I have to get, okay.
From us. Yeah, I think there's got to be more. Sure, that's how That's why I don't like it.
And you're not getting unbiased. There's a reason why you get They don't care.
All right.
You have the bills or?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I get these. Yeah.
Am I giving you some? Take this with you?
No, I was just showing you your sign too. Then Justin Humphrey. Maybe one way to one. It's coming.
What did he say? He could have said what I heard.
He said, you know your
Is that fully executed?
Right, is this fully executed? You said one signature? Where? Nice of
Double check to make sure the form only one place to sign.
The form that's in the agreement for the chairperson.
I know,
That's the way the original bond was.
Okay, here's Yep, there's checks.
I don't care about that. Draw a line. Give it
Between then and 70 parcels and other parcels. The number of closing out
But this is not even.
Change the number. They didn't change the number of proposed lines.
Right.
Proposed line, proposed
It is anything you want, it's a discount, right? Doesn't mean it's
I couldn't find one for less than 75. That's insane. All right. There was a pickup truck, there was
What I was trying to say.
Did I go out? Yeah. My neighbors.
My
neighbors, well, I actually back then, they got coming out this morning. He did 3 weeks.
Oh, they did.
They were wheels up, they had the rest of it.
Yeah, I knew 3 people that went.
I rejected every part.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I want actually watch.
Yeah.
And over 2 hours. And earlier today, I went to the remote, we had a box. And I told my niece,
Good,
box.
good.
Everybody was saying, got the
Yep.
talking.
I had signature stuff with them.
I would go to a Super Bowl party, so it's not.
What's
that? No, I would go to a party that wasn't that.
I took my 3 boys to the Super Bowl in Jackson. And that was nice, we were outside, they were playing.
No.
There was 2 degrees.
Yeah.
The way the kickers were kicking, you thought they were kicking 2 degree weather. They didn't do anything.
Yeah, wasn't that amazing?
There was something being said at one point, I think it was Congress, so they were having issues because where they were kicking their places where all the paint was from the Super Bowl. So we got all that paint,
Yeah.
deceptive and also slippery.
I'll tell you, that was the best game I've ever seen, I think. Especially Super Bowl.
All the way to the end. I watched it, we went to my wife's, with my in-laws, my wife grew up watching it, my dad and brother, so they were all together watching it. My in-laws are 4 miles from my house.
This is just so that you access.
They didn't, there was no offensive holding penalties.
They didn't have any penalties, did they? Or did they have one?
They had one, Rob Gronkowski tried to dance, but they had one accepted penalty, 2 called, 1 accepted.
And the Eagles had
4 or 5. But there wasn't a single offensive penalty called.
the announcer on every play.
I know.
The announcers kept saying that one touchdown where he dove in.
Now, it wasn't a catch. He
called it and he ran.
He had 3 steps
Before he dived in.
The announcers are talking about, I'm sitting there screaming, he's a runner, he's a runner.
I mean, it was pretty simple.
Yeah, it's not like the call Pittsburgh's trying to cry that says no call. The guy that Pittsburgh caught the ball and scored the ground, he didn't move with the ball, he didn't make his steps enough. They could have overturned the Corey Clement touchdown. That one, the ball was made up and moving as he went to the ground. But The one for Zach Ertz, that one.
Oh, I-